Welcome back, everyone, to another edition of NB8 right here on Wood TV Plus. Phil Pinarski here, joined once again by AJ Evans. AJ, another impressive week of NBA basketball. We've got a lot of news to get to. Of course, we got to touch on the Detroit Pistons, currently on a 7-game winning streak. Almost came to an end against the Washington Wizards. We'll explain all that in just a little bit. We'll go over our favorite and least favorite things to have happened this past week of NBA action. And the news is that the NBA is going to be releasing the new format for the All-Star Game for 2026. We have some predictions and also what we think might actually lead to some more engaging basketball during All-Star Weekend. But we do want to begin, of course, talking about the big breaking news on this Tuesday, and that is the fact that the Dallas Mavericks, have fired their GM, Nico Harrison. Obviously, people who may not even follow the NBA recognize that name. He is the man behind the blockbuster Luka Doncic trade last year. He's been with the Mavs since 2021, and now it seems that his tenure there has come to an end. AJ, initial thoughts? I mean, I felt like a lot of people have been asking for his head the past couple of months now, ever since that trade really happened, and now kind of seems like the Mavericks are starting to listen to the fans a bit.
Yeah, I mean, Phil, we talked a little bit about this. This was, I think, one of the most shocking trades in NBA history at the time that it happened. Looking back on it in retrospect, I do see and understand what Nico was trying to do.
Right.
I know, Phil, you mentioned you felt the same way, but ultimately it comes down to health and results. And the Mavericks have had neither of those things for a while now. Kyrie Irving is obviously out with a torn ACL. He's your franchise lead guard at this point, and Anthony Davis has been hurt. He's open this year on the sidelines and spent a majority of the season on the sidelines. He wasn't hurt to begin the year, but he's been out now.
Right.
So the results are not promising. Things are looking pretty bleak out in Dallas. And Phil, like I told you, when this season started, I was worried about Cooper Flagg being out on the floor by himself, trying to fend for himself and not having a group of veterans and marquee guys around him to really help ease this transition to the NBA. And so far, that's exactly what it's been. He's been out there alone, and the Mavericks do not appear to be promising on either end of the floor right now. So it's disappointing, obviously. This is not, I'm sure, how Dallas envisioned things going. And subsequently, you look at the Lakers, things are as good as they probably could have imagined when they decided to trade for Luka. But I do think the Mavericks had serious concerns when Luka was traded, obviously, but I think people didn't take some of those concerns as seriously as people in the organization did. People felt Luka didn't want to keep himself in the best of shape and that he wasn't going to, adhere by some of their rules and take their advice, seemingly, in seasons ahead. And I understand their concerns, but ultimately, I don't think trading Luka was the right move. I wish they had maybe had someone more in his circle who had maybe more of a voice to speak with him. But it's just a difficult situation for Dallas, and it's a difficult time to be a Mavericks fan right now.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas is only 3-8 on this season. Again, it's very early in the year, but you can't really like what you've seen so far out of the team, both, like you touched on, AJ, both on the offensive side and defensive side. And, I kind of take this a little bit personally. I picked Dallas actually to make the playoffs this year, kind of based off what Nico was trying to accomplish there in Dallas. You get lucky with the number 1 pick. You get to draft a generational prospect like Cooper Flagg. Coming out of college, it was expected that he could transform a franchise. And then you've got a guy like Kyrie and a guy like Anthony Davis. I mean, I saw what he was trying to do, and I kind of bought into that maybe a little bit more than I should have, because you really don't have much time in the NBA to make these kind of ginormous franchise-altering decisions without producing right away. Again, maybe in a couple of weeks we could be singing a different tune. Maybe Dallas looks a little bit better. Maybe LA kind of falls off a little bit. Maybe Luka kind of takes a step back. But again, just kind of based off what it's right now, it just seems like there's too much animosity towards him to keep him around, and you got to keep the fans happy if you're Dallas.
You do, and the timing of this does feel a little odd, just because the season is so early.
Right.
You almost feel inclined to say that the firing seems a little premature, especially given the fact that, hey, at the end of the day, we understand how the politics of professional sports works. Nico did not make this trade alone. He obviously got approval from the people above him. So I'm not entirely too sure where the reasoning stems from, especially considering that everyone was aware of the plan. Obviously, Anthony Davis being hurt has exacerbated things, and the Mavericks are not doing well. But you knew Kyrie would be out to start the year. You knew you'd have a rookie trying to figure things out.
Right.
Even if Anthony Davis is averaging 25 and 12, okay, maybe the Mavericks are, winning a few games. But, we're still only a handful of games into the season. So I don't know. This entire situation, including the Luka trade, has just been odd in and of itself, and I guess it comes to an odd ending as well.
Well, and it was super odd just the way that he kind of went about doing it. Having those one-on-one meetings with Rob Pelinka of the LA Lakers and being like, "Hey, don't tell anybody that we're talking right now." Again,
Correct.
all very kind of shady, and then again, just kind of re-emphasizing where Dallas was 2 years ago. They were in the NBA Finals. I mean, they had just in the time that he'd been there in Dallas. Since 2021, they've made 2 Western Conference Finals. They've been to the NBA Finals. They got Kyrie in a pretty big deal. So again, you got to just realize how big of a mistake this probably was, at least for his career. Again, there's still a possibility Dallas might end up on top when it's all said and done, but that's years from now.
Yeah.
That is not happening anytime soon. And again, it just goes to show that you kind of can't be taking these big swings and not produce.
Yeah, it's so interesting also too to see, Phil, because there was a point, like we said, where the Dallas Mavericks had the best backcourt in the world.
Yes.
Kyrie Irving, Luka Doncic. There was no one playing at a higher level than those two guys. And I remember when the trade was made, everyone wondered, how is this going to work? You're bringing in Kyrie Irving. How's he going to fit alongside another ball-dominant guard such as Luka? And it worked tremendously for a short time, but it was beautiful when things were synchronized. And so to see where this franchise is now, it's very strange. It's very strange. Things have taken a drastic turn. Usually when teams make the finals, they retool. They maybe add a couple of pieces, subtract a few guys, and they go right back at it until they can get back to the mountaintop and try and win it all. But to see how things have played out in Dallas has been it's been historic. I don't know if we've seen anything like this, especially when you're talking about a talent like Luka, a true generational guy, a guy that could have and probably should have spent his entire career with one team because of how excellent he's always been.
Yeah, and he definitely seemed like he wanted to as well. And I think that also is the big part of this as well, is that he was 25 when you traded him, and now you're looking like you probably going to have to restart a whole other rebuild now and possibly even move on from some of the guys that you already have. Again, really tough time there in Dallas. So again, our hearts go out to all the Dallas Mavericks fans out there. You guys have had quite the past few months, and hopefully things are starting to get back where they should be with the Dallas Mavericks. Let's move on to a team, though, that isn't having a bad time right now, that being the Detroit Pistons. Like I mentioned earlier, currently on a 7-game win streak. We're going to go over this past week of games for them, as we touched on a little bit last week when they first started this win streak, and they have not lost since we last talked, AJ, and they've looked incredible. Real quick, want to go over just some of those game finals. Again, they took on the Utah Jazz, winning 114-103. They only had 9 guys, the Detroit Pistons, and yet we're still able to come away with an 11-point victory there. Jalen Duren went for 22 points and 22 rebounds in that game. So, again, love a big Jalen Duren game. They then took on the Brooklyn Nets, winning 125-107. It's Brooklyn. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time talking about that game. But then we had the big game against the Philadelphia 76ers, who have looked really good to start this year. Philadelphia, of course, wearing those super cool retro Sixers jerseys, which I loved. It was really kind of like, getting shot back to the early 2000s watching that game. They ended up winning 111-108. Again, a really close game, a really great game. We'll talk about that one a little bit too. And then, of course, the big game was Monday night against the Washington Wizards, needing overtime to come away with a win there. Did not think we were going to be starting the show with that game specifically. A scary game indeed. And, of course, the talk of the town is Cade Cunningham's 46 points on 45 shot attempts. AJ, just looking back at this past week of games, what was the most impressive win for them during this stretch?
Oh, man. First off, it's been an absolute whirlwind. This has been crazy to see, but it's been so fun. But I would say I think the Philadelphia game has to be the most impressive, especially just given the circumstances coming into it. Philly got off to a really good start. Their guards are playing at an elite level right now. VJ Edgecombe, Tyrese Maxey have been phenomenal. We've talked about the both of them here on NB8. So I was really looking forward to see how Detroit would respond in that game. And they just, seem to have a counter to every punch that the Sixers threw throughout the night. It was a really cool game. It's cool to see that court and to see the Pistons playing on it, that retro court, the retro Sixers jerseys. But no, ultimately, I think that was the most impressive win, to see how well those guys played together, and just to see how things are just seamlessly, slowly but surely evolving. These guys are getting more and more comfortable with each other. Cade did a great job, I think, of pushing the pace. Pistons did a really good job of getting out in transition, getting easy buckets, and then also, sort of grinding possessions out in the half court setting as well. So I really liked what I saw from them against the Sixers, and I'm sure some people think that, they've barely beaten a few teams that aren't too good this year. But hey, a win is a win at the end of the day. And as of right now, the Pistons are sitting at the top of the Eastern Conference. So you can't complain about much.
Right. No, the Sixers game was great, especially when you kind of take into account that Philly is playing great as well. Again, another team that they could end up seeing in the playoffs, or a team that is going to be competing for a top playoff spot probably in the East this year. So again, the fact that they were able to come out on the road with a win, again, can't say enough good things about that. Try not to harp too much on the negative when you're on a winning streak. During this winning streak, I just wanted to add, Detroit is averaging, they're beating teams by an average of about 10 points a game. So again, a lot of these games, sure, they're a little bit there are some nail biters, but they also do put some teams away pretty quickly, like I mentioned with that Nets game, winning by 18 points in that one. I want to kind of talk about, though, the game against Washington. I really did, despite the fact that it was Washington, I did like the fact that Detroit was still able to kind of battle and come out with a win. We see all the time teams kind of playing down to the level of their opponents, especially if it's a team that's kind of really good and a team that's not so great. But the fact that they were still able to win, everybody's talking about the amount of shots that Cade Cunningham took. But again, I was rewatching some of the highlights from that game. They're not terrible shots for him. No. I just think he was having an unlucky night. And the fact that he was able to still score 46, you had contributions from all sorts of guys. This is a guy I didn't even know was on the team, Dennis Jenkins, hitting probably the biggest shot of the whole game, sending it to overtime there. He's probably, on your average night, the 13th guy off the bench maybe for Detroit. So the fact that he's coming in, giving you 24 points and also hitting clutch shots, Detroit is humming right now.
Yeah, they really are, man. And I heard some noise too about the whole shot percentage thing, and him taking 45 shots or whatever. Who cares? I don't know. I don't.
Somebody's got to take those shots, right?
Somebody's got to take those shots, and every superstar who has played in this league, who has scored, an enormous amount of points, has had nights like that. That it happens. Okay, guys go for 50 on 40 shots. 35 on 30 shots, 45 shots. Who cares? They won. Cade had 45. There, not to demean anyone, but there are plenty of players who can take 45 shots who still can't get to 45 points.
Right.
That's just the nature of this league. And I don't think he took too many bad shots as well. I really don't. Cade is such a cerebral player. I think was just doing what he felt was needed at the time. And he's continued to do that every night. People have to understand, too, the way this offense runs. The ball is in his hands a lot. So there may be more nights like this where he takes a lot of shots, and I think it is abnormal considering the fact that Cade is not, a scorer through and through. I think he's a facilitator at heart, and he's, just sort of destined to make guys around him better because of how unselfish he is and of how well he moves the ball and how high his basketball IQ is. But at the end of the day, him taking a lot of shots is still a good thing for the Pistons because of how skilled and how talented of a scorer he is.
Well, and I don't know how you feel about this, but I would always rather have my guy shoot more shots than necessarily more free throws. I feel like it kind of, keeps the game moving at least a little bit. Another thing about Cade, I guess you could kind of point to this not being as big of a scoring output or him kind of ball hogging a little bit. If you didn't watch any other Pistons game this season, he's the guy leading this offense. He's the guy scoring tons of points. This is not his first 40-point game. This is not even the first 40-point game of the season for him. So, again, I think we all got to, they got the win. He took a lot of shots. So what kind of thing.
Yeah, and he's also averaging just just less than 10 assists per game. He's averaging like 9.1 assists. He's like third in the NBA in assists per game. He's making guys around him better. His assist percentage is near the top of the league. He's, I think, top 10 in assist to turnover ratio as well. So I'm not too worried. The Pistons are moving the ball well. Guys are scoring. He's getting guys in position to score. He had one night where he took too many shots. Pistons still win, still at the top of the East. Can't complain.
Exactly. Well, again, like I said, we don't want to spend too much time complaining on this win streak, but is there anything that you've seen, maybe not just in the streak, the 7-game winning streak, but really throughout the season that you would like to see them, again, kind of continue to improve upon, especially ahead of tomorrow's game against the Chicago Bulls, who have also kind of had a surprising start to the year?
Yeah, for sure. I think Detroit has gotten off to a handful of slow starts this year, which is a sign of improvement in my eyes, because the last couple of years they've struggled to finish games. And I think this is just another sign of a young team. A lot of times in the NBA, teams, young squads either start slow or they don't finish strong. And really bad teams don't do either. But the Pistons have really struggled to start games this year. They're near the bottom of the league in points in the first quarter. They're tied with the Suns and the Clippers at 22nd. And so I'd like to see them improve on those first quarters. And not only just scoring-wise, but everything. They just seem to really start slow at times. And then as the game gradually goes on, they get comfortable and they get rolling. But getting off to a better start, I think, will be pivotal to keeping this win streak alive and to staying near the top of the East. They're playing at a really high level right now. But I think one thing that a lot of young teams struggle with and a lot of young players struggle with, especially when they get more minutes in a rotation, is you got to give 4 quarters every night. 3.5 quarters is not good enough in the NBA. One bad quarter, 3 really great ones sometimes is not enough.
Right.
You really have to bring it. 2 really good quarters and 2 mediocre quarters won't get the job done. So I think the Pistons are gradually starting to figure this out, but I'd really like to see them, work to consistently put together a good 4 quarters every single night.
Well, and again, they're getting a chance to beat one of the only 2 teams to beat them already to start this season. They're taking on the Chicago Bulls on Wednesday night. So hopefully they're able to overcome that and, again, get a little bit of revenge and then extend this winning streak to 8. I don't know what the highest win streak is in Pistons history, but that might be something we got to check on, see how close they are to breaking that.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
All right, awesome. Well, again, big news in the NBA now, kind of shifting away from the Pistons. We probably will see a few Pistons in the All-Star game this year, but the big news from the NBA, of course, is that they are changing the format once again. They are set to unveil what will be coming to the 2026 All-Star game in Los Angeles this February tonight, right here on NBC as part of the games tonight. They're going to be showcasing what they're doing, and this is an issue that the NBA has been facing for quite some time. Just not enough people seem to not only care or just really at all tune in to the All-Star game festivities. There used to be a time, for anybody that doesn't know this, there used to be a time from Thursday to Sunday night, there would be so many different things going on related to NBA All-Star weekend. You had Saturday night with like the 3-point contest, the dunk contest. You had Friday night with the celebrity game, Sunday night with the full All-Star game. Thursday there were some fun things to do. And now it just feels like not even just the fans, but the players just don't even seem to really be bothered enough to care about the All-Star game festivities. And that really is a shame. We were talking a little bit before, AJ, just about all the memories we had of tuning into the All-Star games of the past and just checking out all the fun. It was nice seeing all the top players in the world kind of being all in one space together, competing, these different fun games. I know they're fun, but again, you felt that little bit of competitive atmosphere to it. And that's just been something that's been kind of going away. So I wanted to do something fun for today's show, and that would be, before we know what the NBA is actually doing for the All-Star weekend, what do you think would be good to not only help with the All-Star game, but the whole weekend in general? Anything that you think the NBA should be adding, maybe bringing back for this week, for this year?
Yeah, no, look, there's a lot. I think this should be at the top of Adam Silver's list in terms of things to fix. There's not much. The NBA as a whole is a phenomenal product, but the All-Star game is in trouble. All-Star weekend is in trouble. I would like to see, I know a lot of people have been calling for it over the last few years. I'd like to see the league sort of adopt the world versus US, player situation. I think that would be a really cool game to see. I do think it would It would create an odd issue, though, because I think there are some players that would contribute a lot tremendously to the world team who may not make the All-Star game.
Right.
So I don't know how the logistics of all of that would work, but I do know that, you know, the league as a whole is becoming far more globalized, and that the guys at the top of the NBA food chain are guys from other countries. So I think there's potential within that, but ultimately, though, Phil, you know, there's a lot I'd like to see. I'd like to see them bring maybe like the horse games back.
I have that same thing written down. I remember
really cool.
back in the day, you would tune in and there'd be Kevin Durant on the Oklahoma City Thunder. You had Derrick Rose of the Bulls. You
Rajon
had
Rondo.
Yeah, you had all these guys that were just, let me show you the craziest shot that I can make, because this is who should be playing horse. These guys that can actually make some of these crazy shots.
No, yeah, like that's so cool. And I think you're alluding to something that was a bigger part of All-Star Weekend, which was you got to see a different level of creativity from these guys that you usually didn't see. You saw that in the dunk contest, you saw that in those events like horse, and you saw it at the All-Star game. By the end of the weekend, you would see players try moves and do things that nobody had seen before. And these guys have plenty of tricks in their bag, so it's not something that they're not capable of doing anymore. But I think it comes down to guys simply not wanting to be there and not wanting to, you know, exert the effort that their past counterparts have. But yeah, I would like to see that. But a lot of it is just going to come down to, I think, the attitude of the players. I really hate to have to put it on to them, but that's what All-Star Weekend has always been about. And to tell you the truth, Phil, I felt like when we were growing up, so many players seemed so enthusiastic to be there. You had so many young guys who were happy to be all-stars. You had veterans in the twilight of their careers who were happy to soak it all in for 1 or 2 more years. And then you had players in the middle who were in the prime of their careers who were just happy in general because they're having the time of their life. And then on top of that, you had so many guys who are willing to just participate in festivities just from the competitiveness aspect of it. You know, like a Vince Carter, for example, he was an all-star the year he took the world by storm, won the dunk contest. He didn't have to do that. Tracy McGrady did it. Steve Francis was on top of the world. He was a superstar for the Rockets. He didn't have to do that. But you saw those guys do it anyways. And I don't like to gripe too much about the past because I know it's the past and there's nothing we can do to change it. But you'd like to see some of the players today have a similar attitude and just a want to entertain fans and also, too, to have fun, because that's what it's always been about, having fun. And like we talked about with the gambling thing, these are some of the most competitive people in the world. And the last few years have been troubling because it doesn't seem like the guys on the floor necessarily care about winning the game anymore. Whereas when we were growing up, it felt like if you were on the Eastern Conference, you wanted to show the world that the Eastern Conference had the best players. You know, that's what it felt like, at least by the fourth quarter.
Well, and that was the thing that I really wanted to hit on, was because, you know, there have been talks about getting rid of the All-Star game, kind of like what the NFL did. You know, they got rid of the Pro Bowl, and now they do a bunch of like these wacky fun games, and I love that. But that's what Saturday night is for, in my opinion. That's when you have all these wacky contests. You know, they're a little bit shorter. You know, it's not going to take the whole night, so you can get through a couple of them. I was thinking about this specifically when it comes to watching some of these games, and I don't want to put anything against the players because I mean, I can imagine the season's long. This is usually the one time that you get kind of an extended break from playing games, and you know, if you're tasked to go out to, you know, a place that you don't necessarily want to be at for that week, I mean, I can see why that would be the case, but I think the issue itself needs to be the types of players, I guess, that are moving in here, because the league is so skilled now, right? I mean, there are only a handful of all-star slots, and you could probably put any number of guys in any of those spots. My issue, I think, is that just thinking back to a couple of years ago, you know, when we had so many different guys, you know, you had like even just like the late 2000s, you know, you had like Kobe Bryant, Tim Duncan, Dirk Nowitzki. You had some of these younger guys, you know, LeBron was still, you know, kind of coming up the ladder and making everybody know that he's probably, you know, one of the best players of all time. So again, you had all these guys that were so well-rounded that you put them on any team, they're going to, you know, be able to fit in. Nowadays, I feel like you have so many guys that are so skill-based talents. You know, you've got like guys that are really great defenders, or you've got guys that are really good shooters.
Yeah.
You know, so it's harder to say to not, well, one, it's hard to keep them out of maybe even being on the All-Star game. You know, no shade to Evan Mobley. He's just the first name that kind of came to mind, but he's one of the best defenders in the league. He's a really great player. But are you excited to see Evan Mobley or a guy kind of like his skills in the All-Star game, kind of competing against some of these other guys? But then also on the same track, I mean, Cleveland Cavalier fans probably love that there are guys out there, you know, kind of rewarding some of these other markets, you know, that aren't in LA or aren't in New York or aren't in Boston, kind of getting some love too. So I don't know how you balance that. The one idea I had, and I want to hear your opinion on this, AJ, is doing a sort of older stars versus younger stars. You know, kind of like you know, because you've got like, you know, imagine a team with like LeBron, KD, Steph Curry kind of thing. And then you've got, you know, Shea and Anthony Edwards and Luka kind of competing. You know, these are the guys that are coming up, and, you know, even if they are already stars, you know, there's still these older players that are still considered the best at their position or the best that we've seen in recent memory. And so you kind of have that correlation. You've got the older guys maybe wanting to hang on a little bit longer to being the top guys. I don't know. I think that is the next logical step for them, honestly, is just kind of getting into that point. You've got to find ways to motivate the players, and I think what better motivator than Father Time, and also, you know, the fact that these younger guys are coming into the league.
No, and that was a part of an idea that I had last night when I was thinking about it. I think, you know, it might sound crazy, but maybe eliminating the showcase, you know, the rookie sophomore showcase, and making the All-Star game a little bit more selective, and like you said, making it a little more aged based, so you could match up some of the game's younger stars with the game's older stars. I think that could also be really cool too. But you brought up something that I think is a little important with the Evan Mobley thing. The league promoting its stars seems to be in a bit of an odd space right now, because you have a lot of guys who are in the twilight of their careers who have done so much for the NBA and who have really helped move things forward. And then you have this group of young guys who are not necessarily at the forefront of the NBA's promotional standpoint right now. At least that's how it feels. You know, it seems like LeBron, Kevin Durant, Stephen Curry are still at the top of that food chain, with Ant, Shea, and Luka not too far behind from the outside looking in. But I think the league also needs to in some ways get back to that, because that does fall on the NBA at the end of the day. You know, Vince Carter could jump out of the gym and he took the world by storm. It didn't change the fact he was playing in Toronto. But the league made you see him. They made you pay attention to him. And he also reminded people of Jordan. And that's just one example. But there are so many talented guys that I think took the world by storm, and that helped make All-Star Weekend just that much cooler, you know, Phil? So something else that I also thought about, I'd really like to see, this is smaller, but I'd like to see the league bring back the traditional skills challenge.
Yes.
Like with like the premier playmakers of the league, bringing them together, you know, like getting Cade out there, you know, getting Luka out there. I would love to see that, see those guys, you know, make chest passes, run through the cones. I know some people feel it's boring. I think it's actually a really cool thing to see. You get to really get to see guys' fundamentals, like up close and personal. You can see how quickly they move, how quickly they can make a jumper, how quickly they can make a really sharp pass and keep things going. I always thought that was one of the coolest events when I was younger. And I think it also, just on a much smaller scale, it promotes fundamentals, which is something that you could never, you know, promote enough of in the NBA. So
especially if you're trying to keep growing the game, which is what the NBA has kind of put at the forefront of the league for the past couple of years, is trying to get basketball in as many homes around the globe as possible.
Like you mentioned, Phil, it's really cool to highlight different elements of the league throughout the course of the weekend. So obviously the 3-point shooting contest, you highlight the game's best shooters, no question about it. The skills challenge was designed to highlight the league's best playmakers, guys who may not, you know, go for 40 every night, or who may not be able to dunk on you, but guys that lead some of the world's best offenses, you know? And then even with like the horse thing, you know, it shows some of the game's most creative players. I don't know if you've ever seen it, Phil. There's an old school one of George Gervin and Pete Maravich. And it's so cool. They're calling out all their shots before they do them, but stuff like that is just classic to me. And not only that, it ages really well too, which nostalgia is something I think that all the professional sports leagues are always looking to tap into. So I would just like to see them sort of get back to doing things the way that they were. And I'd also like to see the players just try and be a little more competitive with it and just to have fun. Like I said, even you don't have to take it all too serious, but at the end of the day, you still want the product to be watchable.
AJ, always a pleasure getting the chance to talk to you. Thank you so much for stopping by. We'll see you again next week for another week of NBA basketball.